The courtroom seethed with an electric chaos barely restrained by order. Cameras perched like vultures on tripods flashed in rapid succession, casting disorienting bursts of light over the packed gallery. Murmurs rippled through the air. 1,000 whispered theories bleeding into one collective gasp of anticipation. Every seat was filled. Every eye was fixed on the slender figure approaching the witness stand. Elon Musk wore an uncharacteristically plain grey suit, the kind of outfit that made him look almost small, almost ordinary. Yet there was nothing ordinary about the envelope he held. His steps echoed against the marble floor, a slow, deliberate rhythm that punctuated the growing unease in the room. Without ceremony, without warning, he reached the microphone, placed the folder on the table, and with a practiced flick, exposed its contents to the public eye. The first page alone was a bombshell. Classified financial documents linking Michelle Obama to an intricate web of covert donations and shell charities, all funneled quietly through the smiling facade of the Obama Foundation. Gasps erupted like gunshots across the courtroom. Reporters dropped their pens. An elderly woman in the front row clutched her chest. Barack Obama, seated behind a barrier of polished glass with his legal team, visibly tensed. His jaw twitched. His fingers drummed an agitated rhythm against the table before slamming down hard with a crack that silenced even the cameras. His face, once the epitome of control, now radiated something darker, raw fury mixed with something dangerously close to fear. The room froze, locked in collective disbelief, as if the foundations of truth itself had shifted. Somewhere above the chaos, in a detached, almost mournful tone, the narrator's voice cut through. The first crack in America's golden facade had finally split wide open, and no amount of legacy could seal it shut again. The silence that followed Elon Musk's revelation hung like a heavy shroud over Washington. Outside the courtroom, America bristled with uncertainty. News anchors stumbled through live broadcasts, pundits scrambled for narratives, and ordinary citizens, weary from years of empty promises, wondered if they had been fooled once again. Beneath the towering facade of the Obama legacy, deep cracks were now exposed for anyone willing to see. Barack Obama sat alone in a quiet, dimly lit room within the courthouse. The glare of his former life, the cheering crowds, the warm embraces, the dreams of transformation, felt like distant echoes. Now there was only the suffocating weight of preservation, the desperate need to protect a crumbling empire built on image. His hands, once steady at podiums across the globe, now trembled as he thumbed through pages of damning evidence. He whispered to no one, "This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this." Michelle Obama, fierce and unyielding, stood a few doors down, speaking in urgent whispers to her closest advisers. Loyalty had always been her armor, but even steel bends under enough pressure. She had known of the questionable donations, the silent agreements scribbled across secret emails, the foreign hands sliding money into the foundation's coffers. She had justified it then, telling herself it was survival, not betrayal. Now, betrayal stared back at her from every headline. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, a man once enchanted by political visions, now moved with the purpose of a man betrayed. In private meetings, he unfurled documents leaked from forgotten whistleblowers. Proof that donations to the Obama Foundation were not just altruistic gifts, but investments expecting silent returns. At his side were financial analysts, tech experts, and even disillusioned former insiders who once believed in hope, but now only believed in the rot festering behind polished speeches. Across the country, the mood had shifted. Divided towns buzzed, with anger, suspicion, and a gnawing sense that no hero had ever truly existed. In the background, one particular email chain whispered a dangerous truth. Michelle's private correspondence with foreign banking elites was real, undeniable, and buried carefully until now. But nothing buried stays hidden forever. The revelations simmered beneath the surface. But the city's heartbeat had already changed. Elon Musk, unfazed by threats and whispers, assembled a team of forensic auditors and ex-intelligence operatives in sterile conference rooms under the hum of flickering lights. They pored over thousands of financial records, decoding the labyrinth of donations spiraling outward from the Obama Foundation. One by one, the connections emerged. Shell charities, dummy corporations, and offshore accounts, all with faint fingerprints leading back to Michelle's inner circle. Inside the private wing of their Martha's Vineyard estate, Barack confronted Michelle under the low glow of a solitary chandelier. His voice, once warm with affection, cracked under the weight of disbelief. "Tell me it isn't true," he pleaded, eyes searching hers for a truth he already feared. Michelle, arms crossed defensively, met his gaze with a brittle calm. "It's not what you think," she said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Barack stepped back, heart hammering against his ribs, realizing for the first time that the woman he loved had kept a world of secrets tucked behind her polished smiles. Cornered, but unbroken, Michelle summoned her most loyal allies. In whispered meetings behind locked doors, she orchestrated a campaign to bury the story. Discredit Elon, cast doubt on the evidence, paint the leaks as politically motivated attacks. Emails vanished, servers wiped, former employees warned with quiet threats masked as friendly advice. Survival was no longer a choice. It was an instinct. But guilt gnawed at Michelle in the stillness of the night. Alone in their dimly lit library, she stared at the blaring headlines, fingers trembling against her wine glass. Whispers of betrayal floated through her mind like smoke. Was it ambition, survival, or pride that kept her silent? A single tear escaped, sliding down her cheek before she wiped it away with fierce resolve. There was no room for weakness now. Outside their walls, the cracks had begun to spread. Anonymous tips found their way to hungry journalists. Social media platforms exploded with speculation, outrage, and relentless mockery. Crowds gathered outside the once revered Obama Foundation, holding handmade signs that demanded transparency and shouted accusations into the cold wind. The tides were shifting, and Michelle felt it in her bones. Every carefully crafted lie, every desperate cover-up was crumbling under the weight of the truth they had tried so desperately to bury. And somewhere, watching it unfold from the shadows, Elon Musk smiled grimly, knowing the real reckoning had only just begun. The world watched with bated breath as the government hearing was broadcast live across every major network. Rows of cold, indifferent faces lined the chamber, but the tension was palpable, thicker than the humid air inside. Elon Musk sat at a hand, the witness table, his expression unreadable. A single folder of evidence resting at his fingertips. The nation hung on his next move, desperate for either salvation or scandal. When Musk rose, silence swallowed the room. He leaned into the microphone, his voice calm, deliberate. "The evidence speaks for itself," he said, sliding open the folder. Screen after screen lit up across America, displaying documented payments routed through hidden charities. bank records, showing transfers tied to foreign conglomerates, and email chains where Michelle Obama personally thanked anonymous benefactors cloaked behind shell companies. Whispers erupted across the hearing chamber, thick with disbelief. Michelle sat rigid, her jaw clenched, hands white-knuckled on the polished table. Barack, normally a fortress of charisma, shifted uncomfortably, anger flashing behind his eyes. He rose suddenly, voice booming with practiced fury. "This is a vendetta. This is about tearing down what we built, about silencing hope because some people can't stand progress." Musk remained still, offering no rebuttal. He simply nodded toward the next slide. A private memo from Michelle, dated months earlier, outlining discreet fundraising strategies involving foreign agents. The proof was overwhelming, undeniable, devastating. Michelle, trembling, stood. Her voice, once commanding, now wavered with raw emotion. "This isn't just about money," she cried. "This is about history, about preserving voices silenced for too long. They don't fear corruption. They fear representation. They fear us." Her speech ignited murmured applause among a handful of loyalists, but it quickly withered under the brutal clarity of the evidence. One final document flashed on the screen. A signed agreement between a known foreign lobbying group and a front organization linked to the Obama Foundation. Michelle's eyes widened. Barack's mouth fell open in disbelief. For a fleeting moment, time froze between them. Barack turned slowly, meeting Michelle's gaze. He searched her face for denial, for explanation, for anything but the cold, guilt-soaked truth that now hung in the air between them. Tears threatened at the corners of Michelle's eyes, but she said nothing. She couldn't. The betrayal was complete. A single tear slipped down Barack's cheek, unnoticed by the cameras, but unmistakable to Michelle. She looked away, shame burning her skin like acid. No words were spoken. None needed. In that instant, everything collapsed. The love, the partnership, the myth they had so carefully constructed. There, beneath the merciless glare of a nation's judgment, two people who had once conquered the world now stood utterly, irreversibly broken. The gavel slammed down. The hearing recessed, but the damage was eternal. And as the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, the realization settled heavy across the land. No legacy, no matter how carefully crafted, could survive the truth. The verdict of public opinion was swift and brutal. Across cities and small towns alike, crowds surged into the streets, waving handmade signs and chanting demands for transparency. Night after night, television screens flickered with images of protesters outside presidential libraries and foundations, their voices rising in unison. "Audit everything!" they cried, their anger cutting through the cold autumn air. The media fractured into warring camps. Some networks clung desperately to the old myths, painting the collapse as a witch hunt orchestrated by billionaires with grudges. Others, sensing the shifting tide, distanced themselves quietly, retracting once glowing profiles and editorials. The silence from former allies spoke louder than any condemnation. Inside the sprawling Martha's Vineyard estate, Barack and Michelle withdrew from the world they once commanded. Gone were the advisors, the strategists, the loyalists who had built careers on the Obama name. One by one, they slipped away, offering curt farewells or none at all. Isolation, once a privilege of power, now felt like a prison. Barack paced the empty halls, his mind heavy with memories of speeches once filled with hope. now echoing like hollow ghosts. Michelle sat alone in the sunroom, staring blankly at the grey sky, a glass of untouched wine trembling slightly in her hand. Their conversations, when they happened, were brief, brittle, and haunted by everything they dared not say aloud. Far away, in a modest office overlooking the Washington skyline, Elon Musk stood by the window, watching the world move on. There was no victory dance, no smug press tour. He understood that truth, once unleashed, needed no celebration. It simply existed, immutable and unforgiving. He turned away from the cracked facade of the Obama Foundation, now cloaked in investigation and shame, and whispered under his breath, "The empire never survives the weight of its own lies." The camera panned over the ruins of what once gleamed with promise. Shattered glass crunched beneath forgotten steps. The cracked walls of the Obama Foundation looming like a monument to broken dreams. A tattered hope poster clung desperately to a rusted pole, flapping weakly against the bitter wind. In the narrator's solemn voice, the truth finally echoed. Power corrupts not in thunderous applause, but in whispered compromises behind closed doors. Even the brightest faces can hide the darkest secrets, and sometimes it takes a crack, one brave enough to pull at the seams, for the whole illusion to fall.